All right. So, yeah. Okay. Okay. So, yeah, I think you all can see my screen, right? The Google Classroom.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So, just wanted to just go through the classroom real quick. So, I have posted some assignments. Some lab. Some of them are descriptive, just to collect information and send it to me. So I got a lot of assignment submitted by students. So I'm kind of grading it. So I know it is a lot of homework at the same time this week, but just take your time to finish it today or by the end of the week. So we have some identity management. There is a quiz and 2 labs, and then the simple storage, which is S3. We have a 2 more labs in S3 bucket. So if we can finish this by end of this week, that will be great, or through the weekend, that will be great. So when you do the lab, try to take a screenshot and send it back to me. So I just wanted to make sure everybody is following the class. So without further ado, just keep an eye on your classwork, just finishing it off, and then I will be putting grades here. So and then send it back to you. So I'm going to start with the S3 bucket, what we left off last week. Just going to go and start again what S3 bucket is. So this particular class, today's session, we will be concentrating more on the storage, which is an integral part of AWS services. So we are going to cover what is S3, S3 basics, and working with S3 buckets, key value store, availability and durability of the storage, the characteristics of the S3 buckets or the storage, and securing your data, and the different consistency models. And then we will go through the exam tips. So I think we should be able to finish it in next 40 minutes, and then I will let you enjoy the rest of the day. So what is S3? So S3 is an object storage. Object means you can be files, you can think of videos, or any object can be placed in that bucket. So don't say file storage, it is an object storage. So object is not, file can be an object, but there are so many different objects can be stored in S3 buckets, not just the files. So that's why we call it as object storage. And it is scalable. There is no limitation for the size of the bucket. So you will be paid based on the size of the files you store. So that is the concept, the cloud concept. And it is very simple. Simple means you can upload the file and you can download the file very easily using like different applications you can integrate with. It's a simple protocol. So those are the 3 things you need to understand. It's an object storage and highly scalable and durable and simple. Those are the three S's. Okay. So the basics of S3 is one, unlimited storage, a volume. You can put as much of data into that bucket. And you will pay only how much you are using it, using the space. And then the object can be up to 5 terabyte in size. Each object, you can store it. The size can be 5 terabyte. So that's very important. And then the S3 buckets store. See, S3 buckets are basically a store is equivalent to like you are storing files in a folder, right? Like that object, instead of files, you call it as objects. So S3 bucket, one main thing is universal namespace. So each object you're storing there, it is qualified by a URL. So basically HTTPS :/ the bucket name, and then the S3 dot region, whatever region it is. And then you have the Amazon AWS, which is constant. And then the file name, which is the key name. For example, ralphie.jpg. So let's say if I am having my own, file, and there cannot be having another Ralphie JPG in anywhere in the world. This is the only name which is universal, right? There cannot be another acloudguru.s3.us1.amazonaws.com/Ralphie. So that is what I am talking about. This is an example, the number 2 point. So it is universal namespace. And whenever you upload a file, it gives you a confirmation code, which is 200. So that means the upload was successful. So going to the next one, there are 2 important things you need to understand: the key and the value. So key is basically the name of the object, ralphie.jpg, and the value itself is the, for example, if it's a JPEG image, so that means it's the value means it's a picture, right? Where in the binary form, so that is the value. So there is a key and a value. That's a pair. The key value pair is part of the S3. So the object you are storing there. So you are storing in this case, key value is ralphie.jpg, and the value is it's a whole binary file. And the other thing you need to be sometimes when you're storing the objects keep on updating the object. So if you want to version it, and I want to see what was the value 2 days ago, so you can go and look at the version. So when you enable the versioning in the bucket, every time a document or an object keeps changing, it keeps a version in the same S3 object, like where you can see, okay, the objects has changed every day, but I want to go back like 10 days ago, what was the value, and you can go back and see the version. So that's what it is. So you have the option to enable the version, or because many times what happened is some of the data, they need to keep all the versions as part of the compliance. So we need a version enabled for that bucket. And the other thing is the object also has more information about the object. See, the object may be having what kind of content type it is, what time it was modified, who created it. So all those information about the object also can be stored in that that object. They are called the metadata. So metadata is the data about the data. So that's what it is. So these 4 things, you just keep it in mind. S3 is a safe place to store your files because I'm talking about so many securities and durability is there in the S3 bucket. So think about, you have an USB drive or a hard disk drive. Anytime it can, it's a hardware device, it can It doesn't work sometimes, but you have to keep it with you all the time. So this is a cloud storage, and this has so much security available when you are keeping the files or object in that S3 bucket. And it will be available anytime. So that's the beauty of it. So it is a built-in availability. It's like a 99.95% or 99.99% availability. So when you store an object there, you have a availability between 99.95 to 99.99%, which is a very good availability you can trust. And durability is whatever you store, you get the data back in one piece. So those are the two main characteristics stands out for S3 bucket. So storage is very important. So there are different tiers of S3 buckets. So like if you want, they're having different pricing model for S3, like standard, and then there are something which you can store it in a long term, but you will have to wait for getting the file back. So, but you will be paying a lesser amount. So we will start with the S3 standard. The S3 standard is the default one, which is when you're creating an S3 bucket. This is the standard S3 bucket you will be creating it. And this is usually for frequent access. Sometimes you've been taking the file on a daily basis, or almost on a daily basis or hourly basis. So it's designed for frequent access. Means you can store the data and retrieve the data pretty quickly. So that will be a little bit more expensive, but it has more availability and durability. So durability means whenever you're storing the object into an S3 bucket, remember we have different availability zones. So the same copy will be stored in two different availability zones. And so that if one goes down and if the one file got corrupted in one of the availability zone, you get a copy from the other. So it will get, and the user will not even know about, so that you will get a 99.9% availability, and it is durable. And it is suitable for most workloads. And this is one of the exam, it'll happen. And this is the default storage class. So when you're creating an S3 bucket, there are different storage classes are available. Means there are around 6 storage classes available. So each class has a different pricing model and the usability. So when you're creating the S3 bucket, by default, the storage class is S3 standard. So use cases include websites, content distribution, gaming applications, and big data analytics. So this is basically S3 buckets are mainly for fast retrieval, gaming applications, and fast retrieval is very key to this, right? And websites information which is stored, and content distribution, data analytics, all these informations are mostly static. But S3 bucket is not suitable for storing an operating system or any of those dynamically changing data. Keep it in mind. So there are different kind of storage available. So they price it in such a way that if you are using it frequently, there is one tier, and then the second one is infrequent, and then the third one maybe for a longer time storage. So you are keeping the data, like as part of the compliance, you may need to keep the data for 10 years or something. Then we have a different storage class. So that will be very cheap. So based on the use cases, they give different storage classes available. We will come in detail on that. And the next thing is, these are the characteristics. So in the exam, they may have some other things into the mix, and then one is tier storage, lifecycle management, and then versioning. And there may be another thing they put it on, say that which one is not a characteristics of S3 bucket. Just keep in mind, these are the characteristics of S3 bucket. So what is the lifecycle management? So we talk about different tiers of storage with different pricing model, right? So we can also say, we can also create a lifecycle management. I'm going to go and give a demo on that. Let's say I keep storing the files, but every 3 months I wanted to archive those and put it into a long-term storage. So you can set it up rules where, okay, after 30 days, this should move into infrequent storage. And then after 1 year, it should move into a glacier, which is like a long-term storage. So that once we set up the rule, these objects move from one storage tier to a different storage tier. And then that way, first of all, you will be paying less, and then you will have more control on the, you don't need to copy every time. Okay, every month somebody has to go and move everything to another storage class. You don't need to do that. We can set up the life cycle in the storage bucket, and I'm going to show you that in the demo. And then you can also version control on a bucket. I want to have all the object, which is, let's say I have an object which is overwritten on a next day, and it will have 2 versions. So every time it gets updated, it has a version. If you get deleted, you can see the older version. So all those things are the characteristics of S3 bucket. Securing the data. So the next thing is, we talk about availability and durability. Next one is security. So security means, the objects are stored in these buckets and which will be encrypted. So there are 2 different kinds of encryption. One is a server side, in the server side encryption, where the objects are in an encrypted stage where nobody can hack in and get the data. So this information is secured and it is encrypted. Without a key, you cannot decrypt that file. That's very important. About, let's say, if you are storing some financial information or credit card or anything, those information need to be encrypted and secured so that it will not get into a bad actor's hand. And then you can also set up controls that who can access which object. So first of all, we can set control on the whole bucket, that only certain people can only access that bucket, all the objects inside the bucket. And also you can say, I can also individual objects, you can attach rules that who can access, who can modify it, who can delete it. All those controls you can put it in there. So just imagine, this is not just a drive. It has so much things built into this this bucket, the storage device. And then you can also have bucket policies. So when we are, there are so many bucket policies where you can say who is allowed to put the object into that bucket, or who will be available to delete the object or overwriting the object. So much controls you can put it in when you are creating the buckets. So security is very important. 3 characteristics on the security: encryption, access management, and policies on the bucket. So strong read after write consistency. It's very important in the exams. A lot of questions comes there. So whenever you are writing something, like if you are updating an object in the S3 bucket, immediately it just refreshes it. So somebody is reading it after you are putting the object, you will get the information, whatever is written into it. So there is a strong read It is not reading it from the cache. So many times you see in the browser, sometimes you get the cached information. Then you will have to clear up the cache to get the new information. But S3 bucket, you won't get the cache. Whenever you have updated or when you are inserting, when somebody is taking the object, retrieve the object or downloading the object, you get the right information to that second. That's what the strong read after write consistency. So that it has the consistency. It always deliver the last minute info, whatever has been written. So that's what it delivers. It doesn't just cache anywhere. So for the exam, it's just some of the tips. So S3 is an object based. You can store files up to each object up to 5 terabytes. Each object can be 5 terabytes. And this is not suitable for operating system or a database storage. For database, you have a different databases and things like that. S3 is not for an operating system to store an operating system or a database storage. And it has unlimited storage. It is scalable. Just keep it in mind, these 4 things. So, and the other thing we saw is the S3 object is universal, and you will have only one in the world. This particular cloudguru.s3, this is going to be only one URL available. It is not like you go to another country and go to this URL, it's going to get the same info. And after the successful upload, you will get a HTTP 200 status code. So it's called 200 status code. Is that means, so whenever you are using a programmable interface, like you are programmed or calling an API to put the file there, when you get a 200 status code means this is success. But if other than 200, that means there is some issues. Okay. Yes, Sudhir, you have a question?
Yeah. So in the previous slide, right, you mentioned that the S3 has universal namespace, right?
Yes.
So here you have not highlighted East region. So let's say in the West region, I can have the same name, like a cloudguru s3.us-west region. So that is a different, or is it same?
I think it is going to be either, because this comes S3.region. When it comes to the region, when you're creating an S3 bucket, you will have to select the region. So right. It's attached to the region. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Venkatesh, you may want to check that. I believe it is universal, means it's not region based. Okay, even though we are giving the region name, it may be universal. That is, you cannot create a similar one in a different region. I may be wrong, but
yeah. We can find out. Yeah, because I haven't gone to that level to see that. But that's a good thing. Like, good discussion. We can if somebody can and put that question in. Let me ask the question. 1 second. 1 second. Let me put it into ChatGPT. Okay, S3 objects are not universal across regions. So Amazon S3 is a region specific, which means that when you create S3 bucket, it creates within the specific region.
So, Venkatesh, since if you see that qualification, right, it has East 1.
Yeah.
Right. So nobody can create within the same region the same object. That's why it gives that universal consistency, right?
Correct.
So it can be accessed everywhere. Any other, you're from other zone, you can probably display it, right? But you cannot create one.
Yeah,
If
that
someone
is
is in someone in other region, East 2, that will be qualified in their object. Full qualified
name.
path. Yeah, fully qualified path.
Yeah, but at the same time, since AWS has the content CDN, like a content cache
Content delivery net.
delivery cache. So since it has it, if you're retrieving the object from a different region, it will be cached into that. So it is called, what is that? We learn about that, right? Like cloud.
CloudFront.
Oh yeah, CloudFront. Yes,
Yeah.
that is the AWS CDN. Yeah, there's so many names. Keep forgetting. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but Venkatesh, one thing if you see on the chat GPT, it says is when you're creating an S3 bucket, right? I mean, you can also say that you want it to be replicated across multiple regions.
Oh yeah.
And there's an option to do it. By default, I don't think it does that, but you can force the bucket to be replicated to make sure that people can access the same file.
Yes,
In
yes.
that kind of situation, then even other person will not be able to create with the same name on a different region under the same folder kind of thing, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, then in that case, it will be universal, for that particular region.
Yeah, it's a cross-region replication. That way, the system will automatically maintain multiple copies of the same thing in multiple across different regions.
Yeah.
To basically keep the redundancy kind of thing. Yeah.
And then the Amazon Content Delivery Network, which is this is what I was talking. Amazon CloudFront is what it is. Even though you're, let's say you went to India and then try to access some data from the region, Northern Virginia region, but still will be available because it's been cached in those different edge locations. So that's what I was looking for. Edge locations. So where it will get all those things replicated, where the data is available without latency. So.
But still, when you're logging in from India, right? I mean, you're still connecting, let's say as a AWS console, you log into the same Northern Virginia region, right? You don't log into the India region unless you set up a profile.
Yes.
There, right? I mean,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what the solution architect is supposed to be seeing, that, we have to worry about latency, where the data is coming from, whether we want a replication enabled so that all the region will be able to access the data without the latency. Yeah.
But you don't need a separate account for India region, isn't it? You can
use
the same account. Yeah.
Same account. Yeah.
Venkatesh, a quick question. You said that for the operating system and databases, we don't use S3, we use a different storage. Yeah. So my question is, if I want, what about the backup files of a database?
Yeah, this is good for a backup. Yeah, this is good for a backup. It's a very good solution for a backup.
Okay.
Database backup.
So I can create a S3 bucket to keep my database backed up into that one. Okay.
Definitely.
That's what I wanted. Okay, thank you.
So yeah, S3 and nowadays nowadays with the new architecture, data lake architecture, S3 is considered as a database, because these are storing flat files. So it's easily, for analytical purpose, you can store this in a columnar format, and then you can even read an object like a CSV file using a different database called Athena. There are some different services from AWS where you can do a just like a database query, but without knowing you are querying a CSV file. So those are available. So nowadays it is going into that level, but it is not for consistently read and write. Like, transactional database, this is not a good option because there is a lot of locking happens on a row level and things like that. That doesn't have that capability. Again, going back to the S3 object, we already just want to cover it one more time back into your brain. Key, value, version ID, metadata. Just put in your mind. So how do you secure, secure the S3? Before that, I just wanted to show you how an S3 bucket will look like. Just going back to the, so always when you log in, you can just say, I want to go search for the service. You can just click the S3. So I have this S3 bucket, S3 storage. You can create a bucket from here. And you can create a bucket name. And you have to mention the region. There you go. And also, you have one template of buckets created. And you have a lot of settings you already created, like version control, all those things. You can just copy the existing, settings from the existing bucket. That's optional, but you can create from scratch. And then there are two ways you can do. One is access control list, enabled or disabled. By default, it is disabled because what this is doing is you can control the access of an object on an individual basis. Like each object, you can specify control, who is supposed to be modifying, who can delete it, who can see it. But that's going to be too hard for maintaining it, and the performance will be more affected. So by default, it is disabled, but you can always enable. So this ACL is mainly for individual object level of configuration. And the other thing, by default, when you're creating the bucket, by default, it is blocked for public access. Means if I'm creating a bucket and uncheck this, means it will be available. Anybody can just get that data publicly available, unless you say block all, uncheck the block all. By default, it is blocked for public access. And then you can also enable the version, like, oh, I wanted to keep version of each object. That's possible. And then you can also tag it. So the tagging is, you're doing it basically is for in the end of the month when you're taking a report. So we can tag it for this particular bucket is, whatever we are paying it for this particular cost center. So you can account it for, like, for budgeting purpose, you can account it for that. And then the encryption. So we have a session of encryption, but I will cover that in detail. But I just wanted to show you, there are how you encrypted using a key, where do you want to keep. So encryption is a separate, session. I will cover that. And then there are something called object lock, enable or disable. And I have a slide for that. And then you can just create a bucket. So once you create the bucket, and you will see the bucket, like, okay, let me go to this bucket. I have stored some XML file. It's a file, but you call it as an object. And this object is stored in this bucket. If I enable versioning, then you can see what all versions available for that. So you can see that by going through, there is an option, what version you want to go and look at it, you can see that. And you can copy the URL. And when I copy the URL and put it here, let me show you how it look like. Let me put it into this. See that HTTPS AWS jobs Subramani S3 dot Amazon AWS. So, but there is no region is coming in that name. I don't know why. Yeah, it's another homework. I'll put it so that we can create a bucket and so an object inside the bucket and see in different regions and how it is universal. So we can do a little lab.
Venkatesh, on that screen, if you go back, I think there's two columns there. One is the universal one is the URL one. Go back to
Oh,
that.
is there? 1 second.
Just right click on it. Yeah, copy. And then what's the copy S3 URI? See that one, the first one, the before that, copy URL.
Oh, S3 URI. Okay.
Yeah, if you copy that, I think, it may be much more. Oh, no, it's also the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do some research,
Okay.
So the other thing you can do, once you have a bucket created, you can always go back and it has a lot of other things you can do. There are properties you can mention. Like once you created, you didn't enable the versioning, you can create versions, bucket versioning, and then you can enable the encryption on a later stage. And then the other thing I wanted to show you is you can create lifecycle management. So what the lifecycle management is, in this bucket, I just put a name for the rule, and then I can say any file with a prefix, like the file name start with this, and then move the the current version or move the entire version into a different class. So these are the different tiers of classes available. I told you there are 6 of them. Right now we have the standard S3. You can move into standard tiering, or you can move into a glacier, which is cheaper, but for a longer time. So when you create that, it will tell you how many days, after how many days it should move in. So those are the things you can put it into this rule, which is called the life cycle management rule. And you can do it for an object or a bucket as well. Okay. So the next one is we talk about securing. Okay, we are going to go through the access control level logic and then bucket policies. What are the difference between that? So object ACL work for individual object level. So each object you can specify who can access, you can secure on an individual level, but the bucket policy is for the entire bucket. Just keep it in mind because this is something that will come in the exam. So what to know for the exam? Buckets are private by default. Like you said, right? Like when I'm creating a bucket, it says uncheck if you want to make it public, right? By default, it is private. And object ACLs are for individual objects inside the bucket, okay? So you can specify the access control. That's called ACLs. And bucket policies are for the entire bucket. So who can access, who cannot access. And then when an object is uploaded, it always, you will get a code, 200 code, HTTP 200 code. Just we'll have 5 more minutes. We'll cover most of this today. So the next one is about versioning and what is the advantage of version. And then I'll just give you a demo on that. So what is versioning? And versioning is a version of of an object are stored in S3 itself. You will be seeing the latest version, but if you go back and want to see all the older version, you will be able to see that. It is stored in the S3 bucket itself. That's the advantage of it. This includes all writes, and even you delete it, it will keep the version. So if anything happened to the object, you can always go back and see what happened like this many days ago, or anytime you can do that. And it will be S3 is a very good backup tool. It's just one of the questions you asked, Ravi, that's the answer for that. And then once you enable the versioning, you cannot disable it, because that will create inconsistency. So I have keep on the version and then I disable it and start it again. So what happened to the in between? So you cannot disable, you have to suspend it. Means all the versions which is created is gone, like you can just start again. And then lifecycle rules, I told you, you can also create lifecycle rules where I want to see all the older version should be moved to a different storage. You can do that. And then support MFA. So every bucket, you can also have a multi-factor authentication. Means whenever you're accessing it, you can have an extra authentication using a mobile device or an SMS. So again, we are 5 tips for versioning objects. Just you may get a question from that. So these are the storage classes I was talking about. So S3 standard, that is the frequent access, and it is more expensive. And the S3 standard infrequent access means it is still same kind of retrieval durability, but it is for infrequent access. So so you need, as a solution architect, you need to understand that, like, whether this data is infrequently used. So why you are spending more money for that, right? And the third one you saw, it only stores in one zone, availability zone. So the availability zone, if based on the availability of the process, that is where it says 99.95. That is the only storage class give you 99.95 availability, because it is storing only one availability zone. And the fourth one is, we don't know whether it is frequent or infrequent. The S3 bucket has a machine learning. It decides whether it is intelligent enough to understand, oh, you've been using it frequently, so okay, I'll keep it as a frequent access, or these files you are not using it, so it will move into an infrequent access. And then the rest of the things are Glacier. Glacier is basically it's for longer time, like 180 days, or you want to store it for 10 years. Sometimes legal issues say that you have to keep all the information for 10 years or 20 years. So that kind of information we are storing into Glacier. So Glacier costs less. All the Glacier, there are 3 types of Glacier classes are there. But one, instant access, you'll pay a little bit more. But the second one, it will take 12 hours to give. Like, I want to retrieve some data, it will take 12 hours to get the data, or 24 hours to get the data back to you. So based on that, the pricing is different. So these are the different storage classes. So we talk about, availability is higher in standard and designed for frequent access, suitable for website content distribution, gaming application. We saw this slide before. Infrequent access are, it's for rapid access, but this is a low per GB. Per GB, it costs per GB storage. And then use cases are for long-term storage, and especially for a disaster recovery. If something happened to your production, you want to take it from the, recovery, like a disaster recovery from that, like from this storage, you can retrieve it. So this is basically good for disaster recovery. Data stored. So this, but data, this next one is only stores in one availability zone. And that is 20% less cost regular, but that is by the 99.5 availability. There is 0.5 less availability because it is only stored in one availability zone. All the others stored in greater than or equal to 3 availability zones. Frequent and infrequent, that the system will decide whether it's frequent or, so if you don't know which is frequent and which is infrequent, the system knows how to do that. So the Glacier options I was talking about, this is a long-term storage. So the long-term storage is one for immediate retrieval, and it will be a little bit expensive. Other one, it will take up to 12 hours. So that's another pricing. And then the last one is, up to 48 hours retrieval time. So the cost you can see per GB, it is $0.004. This is $0.0036, and this is 0.00099. So this is the cheapest, the last one. But you are paying the price of not available in, let's say, it will take 48 hours to get the data.
Okay, also one more thing for Glacier. When you're retrieving, there is a fee you need to pay for that, for every retrieval. Yeah,
exactly. So whenever you're retrieving the file, you will have to pay fees for that. So that is where you normally you don't need it, but once in 2 years or something comes up, you can just retrieve, or you can move it back to another S3 bucket if you feel like, oh, these are frequently accessed, you can move it there. So this is a like, and there's a minimum storage duration, minimum 30 days. And even if you keep it for 1 day, they will charge you for 30 days. See, so 90 days and 180 days. So you have to think clearly that whether you want which storage class you are going to use it. So this is an exam tip, just go through. There are these, almost all of them having more than 3 or more availability zone, but there is only one which is stored only one availability. But because of that, the availability is 99.5. The rest of them are 99.99. And then we are almost finishing. Just lifecycle management is basically, you can create a rule to once, how many days the file has been there. Based on that, you can create a rule that after 30 days, keep it for 30 days in S3 bucket standard, and then move into single availabilities for 30 days after that. And after that, it can move into Glacier. So when you create that lifecycle rule, it automatically moves without you knowing it. That's a lifecycle management. So combining lifecycle management with versioning. So sometimes you can also say all the older version, I want to keep all the objects as it is, the latest version, but the older versions, I wanted to keep moving into different, classes based on the, number of days. So that is very important, where you can work with combining the lifecycle management with version. So tips for the lifecycle: automates moving object between different storage tiers. Can be used in conjunction with versioning, and can be applied in current versions and previous versions, for the current versions and the previous versions. So lifecycle management can work with these. The last one is very tricky. Just keep it in mind. You can do it for current as well as previous versions. So the last piece, like the last couple of slides we are finishing. So the next one is how you can lock the object. That is the next one. So many times what happened is a financial industry, they will have to keep the object or the data, but they don't want anybody to tamper that, like either update it, nobody can update it, or nobody can delete it. You know, a lot of things you can do. So they are called governance mode or compliance mode. The compliance is basically the government mandated, like, oh, you have to keep this data without any tampering for 7 years or 10 years. So governance is basically internal control. So I'm going to explain these two in detail, but this is the last slides. So don't worry about it. I just want to finish this before end of today. So S3 object lock is object write once, read many. So that is called the WORM model, WORM model. So what it is write once and read many. But you cannot go and update it, or you cannot make any changes. You can write once, but you can read as many times you want. So that's one kind of an object lock. So what is a governance model? Governance model is basically internally you said, oh, certain users are allowed to overwrite or delete an object, but certain group of people cannot even do that. Like, so you can create a governance mode for a group of users, like, okay, but there are some other users with admin privilege or special permissions, they will be able to do that. So that is the governance mode. But those are things which you are applied in a corporate world where you can say, oh, this is a governance. What is the governance of the data storage? So where you can specify who has more control, who has less control. So things like that. But you can also, or there is a retention setting, how many days you want to retain that, you know, it's coming to the next slide. So the compliance mode is contrary to governance mode. Compliance mode, once you protected that, nobody can change it. So here, certain users can do it, override. But in compliance mode, once protected version, nobody can do the changes by any user. Nobody can use the change. Nobody can overwritten, deleted, or anything you can. So compliance is basically, you know, for example, credit card company, they say compliances, like there are some financial compliances, you know, a lot of things is there in the industry. So we need to comply with that. So that's called the governance mode and compliance. So those are the two differences. I see like a couple of questions about this governance and compliance mode. So retention policy is nothing but, let's say, I want to keep this control, like, you know, nobody should be able to, the governance mode, like nobody should be allowed to delete or overwritten, but you can also keep a retention period, how many months or how many years you want to keep it like that. And after the retention period is over, you can do whatever you want. So that's a retention period. But there's a legal hold also. Like legal hold is basically as per the law, and sometimes you may have to keep these documents or objects without overwritten or deleted, because you know, it may be legal issues. They want to go back and, you know, look at it. Those kind of legal hold can be done on a bucket. So what legal hold is, when you put this hold, so nobody can delete or overwritten until it is been until it is been removed. So legal hold is basically until it is been removed, you cannot make modifications or changes. But retention policy, after the retention is done, it automatically remove that policy. Means like if it is for 180 days, after 180 days, these things can delete, or, but if you put a legal hold, it will not allow to make any changes until you remove that. And there is something called a glacier, because that is the cheapest one. long-term storage. You can also put a lock on those because those are stored it for a longer time, but at the same time, you can also protect them by putting a vault lock into that. So vault lock means write once, read many, WORM. So object lock is basically S3 object lock. Basically, we talk about WORM, write once, read many. Then object lock can be individual objects or across the bucket. The object lock comes in two modes. One, I talk about governance mode, and the other one is compliance mode. Governance mode is basically some users can make changes, some users cannot, because based on the permissions they have. The compliance mode, yeah, nobody can change it until it is expired. And then you have legal hold, and there is another hold, retention period. See, compliance mode and governance mode, what is the difference? And S3 Glacier Vault exam tips. Glacier Vault lock, easily deploy and enforce the compliance controls on the Glacier. Read once, write once, read many. That end of the class, I know I was running fast, but go through the PDFs and then the PowerPoint, and I just copied only the points which is coming in the exam. But I'll be posting more labs as I go. Thank you. A lot of people submitted their homework, but I know a lot of things in this week. But when you try the lab, that really you will be more confident on the exam. Not just for the exam, but at least whatever we learn, we are putting that in practice. So you will have a good touch and feel on that. But anybody has any questions? I'm uploading that into our Google Classroom. This a lot of people couldn't join today. Any question?
Hey, Venkatesh. So I just looked at the URL. If everybody is okay, I can explain it to why that URL did not have a region name.
Yeah.
Okay, before 2019, the URL, S3 URLs were globally unique. Okay, you could you will be still creating in a region, but you cannot create the same bucket in a different region. That used to be like that. So by default, so if let's say if you're creating a URL in your bucket in Mumbai region, even though you didn't give the region name, it takes you to the place. That's how it was.
It's a universe.
Yeah. And so and the default and right now, if you're creating anything, the default URL takes you to the Northern Virginia.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, so that's how it was. And if it was created before 29, it will take you to the region where it was originally created.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is the one I recently created. That's why I don't see the region in there. Yeah.
No, before 2019.
Before 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
So so now also, even though we said, okay, the bucket names are, you can create the same bucket name in a different region, but if you create it once, nobody else can create that bucket name anywhere else.
Anywhere else.
It's reserved for you, pays for the replication and everything.
Yeah.
Okay. You may be storing it at only one place, but still, in the future, you want to create a backup in a different location, you can do that because that bucket name is reserved for you.
Yeah. So
across the regions.
For example, here, when I try to create a bucket, when you guys try to create a bucket with the AWS Lab, V Subramani, you won't be able to create it.
Yeah.
Because
so
it's
yeah. Even if you are selecting a different region, you won't be able to do it.
So that is why people normally what they do, they put their domain name first, dot, then region, they qualify that name as much as possible so that it will not get, it will create a universal name. So yeah.
Yeah, so in this case, you have yours is in US East Northern Virginia.
Mhm.
Okay, that's why the default URL is taking you to your
Oh,
default domain,
okay, got it.
default region. Yeah.
All right, something we learned together.
Thank you, Venkatesh. You taught us a lot.
Thank you. And we always have ChatGPT on the side. Any questions we can ask. So if you haven't tried a chat.openai.com, and a lot of questions will get answered. But people who are students don't use it because it gives some shortcuts. So
Yeah,
Alright.
now I hear a lot of versions. Of Chat.
That's going to be accepted in the future, just like you're using the spell checker.
Just like a calculator, right?
Yeah.
Right.
The
I
shortcut,
always
yes.
I always compose email and then I just send it to ChatGPT, rephrase this email. It really rephrases that email, and I can say, oh, my boss, is a French guy, it will give you, that way, like the person will like it. Personalize it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe Venkatesh, maybe I will ask you later outside how you kind of recompose that with a ChatGPT kind of thing. Yeah, I
Oh,
use
yeah.
ChatGPT for mostly doing some kind of research on a new technology and new products and what's available. And
Yeah. So, when I send an email, right, when you write the whole information and then put a rephrase before that and then put it into ChatGPT, it will rephrase it for you. Very clear.
Oh,
Yeah.
so maybe you can do that for the whole documentation too. If you are creating a analysis of alternative or return on investment or some kind of a document.
Oh, yeah. It can. And
Anything, yeah.
yeah, you can say, you can also say rephrase or sending an email to your boss in a good way or things like that. Then it will tell you, it will give you a clear email and very good.
But, is it different from the integration of the Outlook with ChatGPT that Microsoft already did? I mean,
The
I thought
Copilot,
with,
right? Yeah.
yeah, with the add in there, right? You should see the option on the Outlook client. I think somebody said that you can click on that to.
I think
really
that's the same OpenAI.
Okay, so without going through a separate window
Yeah.
with ChatGPT, it is a built-in through a
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
a plugin. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. All right.
Right. So I will post this video in the Google Classroom.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a nice rest of the day.